Now, I'd like to argue that FNAF's more recent story is much more clear than a lot of people like to make it out to be. But there's definitely a lot of stuff that still needs some context on. A lot of things left unclear, whether it be purposeful or it's due to bad storytelling. I'm not going to talk about that. What I am going to talk about is a theory I've had for the last few days. Now, this theory is really fucking stupid, probably not true, and it's kind of bad. But I really like it, and I just kind of wanted to share it. So, my friends, today I shall share with you the Glamrock Agony Bonnie theory, or Agony Glamrock Bonnie theory. Those are the two titles I'm using. Yes, it's really stupid. Don't call me autistic. Hear me out for a few seconds. But for this theory, I need to establish something else that I've noticed, and a few other people I've heard noticed, and that's that a lot of the stuff in the Pizzaplex seems to be reused from the 70s and 80s. The biggest example of this is Sun and Moon, who were literally created for the 1970s Fall Fest, whether probably somewhere around the late 70s. But knowing this, what else was reused for the Pizzaplex? Well, I was reading over the Mimic story recently, and then I realized something. In the story, it stated that Edwin is turning an alligator costume into a animatronic, because, in the story, basically Fazbear bought out Edwin's company and having him turn their mascot costumes into animatronics. No, in the early 70s, this is around the time that they started making animatronics more a mainline thing for passive entertainment. But then it clicked in me. An alligator animatronic. The only time we've seen alligator animatronic is with Monty. Now, this could be a separate character, like an earlier version of Monty, but could this imply that Monty existed as an animatronic, or at least started production as an animatronic, in the late 70s? So after realizing this, I started to look over if there are any other pieces of evidence stating that maybe the Glamrocks were created sometime in the 70s, or at least way earlier than the Pizzaplex would have opened. And that's when I realized something. The prototype label on Freddy's foot. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically in Ruin, when you find Ruin Glamrock Freddy, there's a prototype label on his foot. Now, what I thought this meant is that they just created a prototype and they put him on stage for some reason. Now, while that idea still works, I have a bit of another idea. Now, throughout the main game of Security Breach, you see neon signs of the Glamrock animatronics everywhere. Now, these wouldn't be too weird, except for Freddy's. He's specifically shown to be yellow with purple highlights. The only other character that's a bear that we know of that's like that, Fredbear. He's yellow with purple accessories. And specifically, as the game continues and Freddy starts to become more ruined and dirty and scratched up during Security Breach, you see that his black tie, isn't actually black. It's a purple tie that was painted black. I think this is meant to all go and imply that it seems Glamrock Freddy was created when Fredbear was still a character, which is pretty weird, considering Security Breach most likely takes place in the early to mid-2030s. So, if he existed all the way back when Fredbear was a character, this goes back to what I was saying before. A lot of stuff seems to be reused from the 1970s and early 80s. But then, I realized another thing. So while playing the new Help Wanted 2 DLC, I realized the mural on the factory. Now, it's not that weird, okay? It's just a regular mural on a Fazbear property. Has Freddy and Bonnie on it. But that's when I realized something. It has a more yellowish Freddy and a blue Bonnie. So the yellowish Freddy is most likely Fredbear. So why the fuck would he be with just regular Bonnie? That wouldn't make any sense. But then it clicked in my mind. Glamrock Bonnie, Glamrock Freddy. Glamrock Freddy is constantly paired with Fredbear. Neon signs showing him as yellow with purple accessories. His actual, fucking character model having a purple bow tie. Glamrock Bonnie's blue. So could this mean Glamrock Bonnie and Glamrock Freddy were originally meant to be a pairing, like an actual animatronic band, in the 1970s? So at this point, I'm just freaking out. I'm making all these connections. It connects with Sun and Moon being reused. It connects to a bunch of other things being reused, like attractions, as we see in Into the Pit game. Bonnie Bowl existed way before the Pizzaplex. We know that Foxy's Log Ride most likely existed before the Pizzaplex. We know that the Carousel and Sun and Moon existed before the Pizzaplex. It's just so many things seem to be reused. And if Monty, Bonnie, and Freddy were from the 70s, Chica and Roxy are also most likely from the 70s. It seems almost everything in the Pizzaplex is reused from the 1970s in Fall Fest. Now, after making all these connections, I decided to start connecting the Glamrocks and all the stuff in Security Breach that we see with Fall Fest to see if I could find anything that could help with the lore. And then I realized something. Fall Fest is constantly shown to be on fire. Now, this is like FNAF seems to have a weird boner for things catching on fire. I don't get it. No one really gets it, but almost everything catches on fire in FNAF. Like, Security Breach is filled with things catching on fire. It's fucking filled with it. But what does this Fall Fest fire seem to have to do with anything? Well, it seems the Mimic has something to do with the Fall Fest fire. In the epilogues in the Tales books, it's said that the Mimic looks burnt. So the Mimic was most likely present in the Fall Fest fire. But if the Glamrock animatronics started production and were under works during the time Fall Fest was happening, they were most likely at Fall Fest. They were most likely meant to be attractions at Fall Fest. So this would then seem to imply they were at Fall Fest, whether they were finished or not, when the fire happened. So that means they have a connection to the fire. Glamrock, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Roxy, and Monty were most likely at the Fall Fest when it caught on fire. So I started to think. FNAF seems to have a real thing to where if a tragedy happens, agony is created. Missing children instinct created Into the Pit Bonnie. I believe Charlotte's death created Shadow Freddy. It seems the Save Them murders from FNAF 2 created Shadow Bonnie. And Eleanor is just, she fucking loves agony and like creating tragedies. So, would this fire that most likely hurt people, that most likely killed people, would it have actually created agony? And where would that agony have gone? Now, looping back to Ruin, when we find Glamrock Bonnie destroyed, the way you find him is going to the mass spots and like deactivating them. And when you go up to them to deactivate them, you hear whispers. Whispers. Why the fuck would I hear whispers? Well, in FNAF, souls and agony are constantly paired with whispers. And if the floor bots are connected with agony, and they're connected with Glamrock Bonnie most likely also has that agony in him. Agony that most likely came from the Fall Fest fire. So here's what I'm proposing. When the fire happened, agony was created, and it ended up going into Glamrock Bonnie. Now, when the Pizzaplex was created, for some reason, Glamrock Bonnie was created with a connection to the floorbots. Or Glamrock Bonnie just started, moving his agony to things. Either of the two work. Now, if this were to have happened, Glamrock Bonnie would have been different from all the rest of the other Glamrocks. He would have had agony in him. Now, is it coincidental he's the one who so happened to be destroyed? Now, you might be wondering what that has to do with him being destroyed. Well, first off, I'm going to say, I don't think Monty destroyed Glamrock Bonnie out of jealousy. Now, with the theory coming up, I do think it's still possible he could have destroyed Glamrock Bonnie. I don't think he did it due to jealousy. Now, why do I think he did it? If he did do it, because I have another option that I like more. But who destroyed it? Who masterminded it? Why was he destroyed? I think it was because of his agony, and I think Vanny did it. In the main game, Security Breach, in the Princess Quest ending, both of the Princess Quest endings start the same. And as we know, the Save Vanny ending, aka one of the Princess Quest endings, are canon. That's the canon ending. Now, in it, Freddy is attacked. He's attacked by staff bots that Vanny's controlling. Now, these staff bots destroy him. He has damage on his chest, damage on his face, damage on his arms. Now, Glamrock Bonnie, while not being the same, has extremely similar damage all over his body. When I mean extremely similar, I mean extremely similar. And as we see, Bonnie Bowl, where his body is found, is filled, and I mean filled, with staff bots. It also just so happens to be connected to two places. Now, a bunch of the attractions in the Pizzaplex are connected to multiple places. Now, Bonnie Bowl is connected to two specific places via doors. That being Roxy Raceway, where the sinkhole is, and Faster Blast. But not just anywhere in Faster Blast. It is a door leading directly into Vanny's hideout. So here's what I'm proposing happened. Vanny, using staff bots in Bonnie Bowl, or I don't know, staff bots that could have been anywhere, from her hideout, from her area in Roxy Raceway, to actual Bonnie Bowl. I believe she destroyed Glamrock Bonnie and hid him away, and specifically made it to where the agony-infested floor bots that were infected with the same agony as Bonnie were used to keep him hidden away and that no one could ever find him. Now, there is evidence for this theory, and it does kind of make sense. The only thing you have to realize is why. Why would she do this? Because Glamrock Bonnie could have went into any of the places that she was trying to, use her master plan? That doesn't make sense. Roxy's always around the sinkhole and stuff. She would have destroyed Roxy too. I believe it was because Glamrock Bonnie was filled with agony, and due to that, the Mimic 1 program couldn't infect it correctly. Now, it could be that the Mimic virus couldn't infect Bonnie correctly due to this, or that he was seen as a threat due to this, but I do think that is the reason why Vanny would want him destroyed. I more lean towards that it was most likely seen as a threat, considering Bonnie had more of a mind, and the whole thing was, we gotta control them. So I think Vanny destroyed him using the staff bots due to the fact that he was infected with agony and could have been seen as a more threat due to him most likely having more intelligence. I do think the other Glamrocks had maybe just as much intelligence just through their AIs, but I think Vanny and Glitchtrap just underestimated them, and that was their downfall with Freddy. Okay. I presented all my evidence. Now, just let me lay out a timeline of how I think it went. 1970s with Fall Fest. I believe the Glamrock started to be created with the help of Edwin, using mascot costumes, and I believe they were meant to be used at Fall Fest. Eventually, for some unknown reason, Fall Fest caught on fire, and the agony of this fire ended up infecting Glamrock Bonnie. Now, decades later, when the Pizzaplex eventually opened, Glamrock Bonnie, still infected with his agony, started to maybe cause problems and be seen as a threat by Vanny, who is still trying to take over the Pizzaplex with the Glitchtrap virus. Now, due to this, I believe she either had Monty or the staff bots destroy Glamrock Bonnie and hide him away using the wet floor bots, who I think was also infected with Glamrock Bonnie's agony, most likely either due to them having a connection with Glamrock Bonnie's AI or Glamrock Bonnie's agony infecting other sources. After destroying Glamrock Bonnie, she had him hidden away and locked away using the same wet floor bots that were also infected with the same agony as his, only for Cassie to come and completely deactivate him years later in ruin. And that is my Agony Glamrock Bonnie, Glamrock Agony Bonnie, Glamrock Bonnie Agony, whatever the actual fuck you want to call it. That's my theory. The theory I've had for a little while, and is one I'm starting to actually believe. It's based on two theories. One, that stuff from the Pizzaplex was reused from a long time ago, and that Glamrock Bonnie was infested with agony, and that's the reason that he was destroyed. It's just basically the story of Glamrock Bonnie and the Glamrocks in general. I hope you enjoyed my theory. I put quite a bit of work into it. Thank you. Goodbye.